André Alexis is a Canadian novelist, playwright, and short story writer whose debut novel, Childhood, in 1997, a story of one man's attempt to find balance between a thirst for knowledge and the power of love, was co-winner of the Trillium Book Award with Alice Munro. It was also shortlisted for the Giller Prize, and it won the Books in Canada First Novel Award. Not bad for a beginning. It was about a year ago today, and I guess it's coming up on Monday, André Alexis' novel 15 Dogs won the prestigious 2015 Scotiabank Giller Prize. And in that same week, if I have it correctly, the Rogers Trust writers, all in 1 week. Unbelievable. That was a great week. And it was also shortlisted for the Toronto Book Awards. This wonderful book questions, what does it mean to be alive, to think, to feel, to love, and to envy, and what is the meaning of life? But that's just for starters, and we're going to get to that in a few minutes. André was born in the port of Spain, Trinidad, and he came to Canada with his sister in 1961. They lived in Petrolia and then moved to Ottawa with his family. André began his career as a playwright in residence for the Canadian Stage Company, where he released a short play titled Lambton, Kent. That was in 1995. His first published work of fiction was Despair and Other Stories of Ottawa in 1994, shortlisted for the Commonwealth Prize. And then in 2005, André published Ingrid and the Wolf, his first work of juvenile fiction, shortlisted as a nominee for the Governor General's Award for English Language Children's Literature. And then in 2014, André Alexis published Pastoral, the first in a planned series of 5 novels on philosophical themes. And the third novel, which just came out in April, The Hidden Keys, available downstairs, is his most recent. André Alexis lives and works in Toronto, where you've no doubt heard him on CBC Radio, where he has hosted many programs. He reviews books for the Globe and Mail and is a contributing editor for this magazine. We are so grateful to have André Alexis here. Come on up, André. Yeah, you get this seat right here. And here you get your very own mic, in case I try to hog the mic.
I sound so accomplished.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to our lovely city. We're so glad that you're here.
It's a city that I went to school in. I was at Regina Mundi for 4 years.
Oh, we did not know that. That didn't make it into your bio.
There you go. Glaring oversight.
Well, if we get an extra 20 minutes, you can tell us stories about that.
Oh, no, you don't want to hear them.
So it was about a year ago that Rick Mercer said, and the winner is. Mm-hmm. What was that like?
Nothingness. You're at a table. There's a bunch of people, including Buffy St. Marie, who's right there going, breathe, breathe, because she taught me how to breathe properly. And then your name is called, and you feel absolutely nothing except, okay, so I guess I have to go up there and get a check for $100,000. Not bad.
Wow.
And so I went up, but the moment in which it actually made sense for me was, so at the Giller you can only have like 2 guests. So I had my daughter and my mom beside me, but my family was in the Ritz-Carlton on the 7th floor, and they were watching it on TV. So when I won and it was announced, they flooded down. And so I had taken the check, and it was like a herd of elephants. My sisters were crying and laughing at the same time. They grabbed me, my nieces were on me, and it was at that moment I thought, hey, actually, this feels good.
Yeah.
Because my family was there.
Isn't that fantastic?
It was great.
I bet you've replayed that memory a few times in your head.
Yes, I have pictures of it too.
And now London knows all about it. Now, I was trying to think of one word that would describe the last 2 books I've read, The Hidden Keys and 15 Dogs. And you'll be surprised, but it's plunge. And the reason I say that is one of the things I like so much about these books is you plunge the reader right into the story. Mm-hmm. They're right from the opening paragraph. And I'm one of those people that I go into a bookstore And usually in London, it's either the bookstore at Western or Indigo. And I read the first couple of pages, and if I don't like it, I leave, and I leave the book on the shelf.
You're supposed to go to page 69, read the first paragraph that is complete there, and if you want to read further, buy the book.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I believe that's the Telegraph or one of the London papers test for if you want to buy a book.
Really? Okay,
Yes.
so I've been doing
Now
it
you know.
wrong all these years.
Yes.
Well, I was immersed by the first paragraph, and so I thought I would just read that first paragraph.
Sure.
And then you're going to take it from there, and we'll talk about that. And I should probably have your iPad instead of the book, but here we go. So this is from 15 Dogs, which won the Giller about a year ago. One evening in Toronto, the gods Apollo and Hermes were at the Wheat Sheaf Tavern. Apollo had allowed his beard to grow until it reached his clavicle. Hermes, more fastidious, was clean-shaven, but his clothes were distinctly terrestrial: black jeans, a black leather jacket, a blue shirt. They had been drinking, but it wasn't the alcohol that intoxicated them. It was the worship their presence elicited. The Wheat Sheaf felt like a temple, and the gods were gratified. So by that point, I was already in the lineup at Indigo with my Visa card out. There's something about the fact that these two big gods are getting drunk at the Wheat Sheaf Tavern. So what actually happens that night with Hermes and Apollo? They make a bet.
Well, they make a bet, drunkenly, I suppose, about the nature of human intelligence, whether it's a curse or a gift. And they wonder whether human intelligence, the way humans think, would make the lives of dogs or animals, any animals, better or worse. And they happen upon 15 dogs that are in a kennel and endow them with human thinking, as opposed to whatever thinking canines have, which is probably just as sophisticated as ours. But they get turned into humans in dog bodies, I suppose.
So by page 3, the dogs wake up in the kennel and their lives have changed. Mm-hmm. They have human intelligence.
Yes.
What prompted you to come up with this idea?
That's a little bit complicated. What happened was I failed miserably to write a story that I like based on Pier Paolo Pasolini's movie Teorema. Teorema is a very strange movie made in the 60s in which a godlike figure comes down and lives with a family in Milan and then leaves after having slept with everyone: the father, the mother, the son, the daughter, and the servant. And his leaving is really interesting because it creates a huge vacuum, a terrifying one, in the lives of the people in the family. And they all react to this absence of the god in different ways. The son becomes an artist, for instance. And I thought that idea was absolutely fantastic. And for years I tried to rewrite it. And I just kept writing worse and worse versions of Pier Paolo Pasolini. And in part that was because I thought that what was interesting was the family. But actually what was interesting to me was divinity. And when I brought it down to just the god and its presence, or their presence in the world, 5 ideas came to me at once. Pastoral, 15 Dogs, Hidden Keys, the new one I'm writing called Days by Moonlight, and the last one, which is my version of a Harlequin romance. They were just all in my mind at once at that moment, once I realized that I wanted to think about the divine. What a strange idea it is, what an interesting idea it is, what a cruel idea it is. And 15 Dogs came out at that moment. So its origin is really with Pier Paolo Pasolini, even though it probably wouldn't look like it if you watched Teorema and read the novel.
So you had 5 ideas at the same time.
Yes.
Most authors I know would kill to have 5 ideas at the same time.
It's not all fun and games, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
I've released a book a year for the last 4 years. I've got 2 more of these stupid novels to write, and then I will be done. So it feels like I've got like a monkey on my back, constantly forcing me to write. But it's okay. I mean, I love what it comes up with, but it's a bit onerous.
And there's a word for this that connects.
Possession.
Oh, that wasn't the word I was thinking of.
Okay,
It
sorry.
starts with Q.
Oh, quincunx. Well, that's because there are 5. And the way the novels are organized is like the 5 on a dice. There are 4 around and 1 in the center. And I have to write the one in the center last because it partakes of all the novels around it. Mm-hmm. So my version of the Harlequin romance will include something from 15 Dogs, something from Pastoral, something from Hidden Keys, and then something from the one I'm writing now. And then it's done.
Well, in the book 15 Dogs, one of the questions is about the meaning of life and what it means to find love, what it means to find happiness. The bet. Can you talk a bit about the bet that the gods have?
Well, I'll talk about love, if you like.
Okay.
Because one of the things. Okay, so Pasolini, that idea was definitely at the root of it. But each of the novels has its own influences. The Hidden Keys was very much influenced by Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island, which I read on my way home from London in 2009. But one of the things that really intrigued me or wouldn't leave my mind while I was thinking of 15 Dogs was a quote that I had heard from a French psychoanalyst who, and this is who it was attributed to when I heard it. I think it's been attributed to innumerable people now. And the quote is, "The opposite of love is not hate, it is power. The idea that hate is still a relation with the other, whereas power is the absence of any relationship with the other. It is the instrumentalization of the other, turning the other into nothing." And I actually thought that was, whether it's true or not, at least a very creative idea. And so 15 Dogs has at its core an opposition between utter power, which the gods have and exercise in horrible ways, and love, which one of the dogs manages to find I think in a deep, almost Dante-esque kind of way. It's a medieval kind of love.
Are we talking about Majnun?
Yes, Majnun, yes.
The big black poodle?
Yes.
Who almost dies because he's at the mercy of the other dogs.
Yes.
And he's adopted by a woman named Nira.
That's correct.
And she takes him in. And
Majnun means the crazy one, and it was stolen by me from Nizami, a Persian poet who wrote Majnun and Layla, a love story. Oh. And Majnun is crazy because he's in love with Layla.
Well, it really is a beautiful love story because this dog and his new owner, Nira, get to know each other so well, but also through language. And can you talk a bit about that? He's endowed with language and he's able to speak and communicate with her that really touches her.
One of the interesting things for me, because the bet is between the gods, whether any of the creatures who are endowed with human intelligence will be happy at the moment of their death or not. Mm-hmm. And so there's an underlying notion of whether happiness can be achieved or not. And one of the ironies for me is that the relationship between Nira and Majnun, which is complete, they're able to understand every nuance of what is said to each other, is not actually something that leads to happiness any more than complete love necessarily leads to happiness for humans. I mean, there's always a possibility that your partner will die, which is the creation of the darkest thing that I guess one can imagine. So, although Majnun was the character that I felt closest to, he did not die happy.
Mm-hmm. And at one point, his owner, who he comes to love without even realizing that he loves her,
yes,
disappears. And
yes.
It's very tragic. This is, you'd think that there would be more humor than there is in this book, although there are some very, very funny points.
It's a strange book. I was at the Word on the Street in Toronto, and there was a tent for Coach House Press. And one of the people who works at Coach House Press started to shield me so that somebody that was facing them couldn't see me. And it turns out that there was a woman who felt convinced that there should be a way to sue me for the way that I had treated the dogs in the novel. I'm not making that up. That's a true story. So, the the horrifying death kind of thing. But, for me, the way that most of us learn about death is through the death of our pets. That certainly is the case for me. That the first inconsolable death in my life was my dog. And so it's a tricky novel because you have to relive those feelings of loss 15 times in a sense,
But how did
But all of us die, I think.
But, I'm not a great dog lover. I admit it now. I sometimes don't even like my own dog. But I came to be much more understanding of dogs through your book and started to see things through their perspective. If, I'm starting to look at my dog in a different way. If he had human intelligence, what he might be thinking. I can tell you from reading your book, I will never ask him to roll over and play dead again.
Well, it's kind of demeaning when you think about it.
It is very demeaning.
Yeah. Yes, all I can say is yes to that one. Was there a question in there?
Well, I'm not sure there was, but getting back to humor, there's some very funny points in the book. There's a dog, Benji, who arrives on the scene with Nira and Manjun. He's one of the 15 dogs that wakes up at the vet clinic with human intelligence, and he shows up on the scene, and he's got a way with language, and he tries to befriend Nira as well, who's Manjun's friend, and he uses the word money, but he can't quite articulate money, and it comes out as monnaie. And
she's a bit freaked out that a French impressionist should be interesting to a dog, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's actually a pretty interesting character because he represents real instrumentality. He's not interested in love or emotions. He's interested in what he can get and what the most direct way to getting things is. One of the things, again, to remember is that it's really about what it is to be human, and that when I agree with you that after the 4 months or however it was to write the novel of imitating dogs, I couldn't look at dogs the same way myself. Mm-hmm. But it was in order to think about the human from a strange angle. So I wasn't really all that concerned with modern theories about how dogs think or what a dog might actually think or feel. I was more concerned with making you feel through the dogs the strangeness of what we do and how we think. So in effect, in the novel, there's a kind of covert history of human thinking that goes on as well. You can probably recognize, if you've done like a first-year philosophy course, some of the thinking and some of the philosophy that goes on in the novel.
But even if you haven't studied philosophy, there's still there's so many levels in this book to question. I mean, just the way the humans treat each other and treat the dogs is something to think about. And the gods, Apollo and Hermes, they don't look at the human race all that fondly. You were quite critical there.
It's funny. For me, yes, of course, it's based on the Greek gods, and the Greek gods are horrendous and childish and unpleasant. But part of why I used Hermes and Apollo, was that when I was young, 9, 10, my father was earning his degree at the University of Ottawa, and his bird course was a course in classical literature. And so he would read to me from Homer the little bits and pieces that he had to know for his chorus. So all of these gods in Greek literature are associated with my dad taking a course at Ottawa U. So there's kind of a personal element to it.
So it stuck with you, obviously.
It did, yeah. Polyphemus, I knew the name of the Cyclops before I knew Sheelin.
Maybe these should be children's stories from the beginning.
Yeah.
What about the smell? You captured the smells of Toronto in various levels. I suppose from a dog's perspective, but I don't think I could walk through Hyde Park again without thinking at it.
The weirdest thing was trying to imagine why urine smells good. What it was that it was just one of these accidents that happened. I was listening to the CBC one day, and it happened to be a documentary on the senses in dogs. And the thing that stuck with me was the host said that if a dog walks into a room where you're making an Irish stew, it can actually smell the constituent elements of that stew. So it'll go, barley, beef, maybe some pepper. I mean, so it could recognize all of the elements in it. And I thought, well, that's fantastic. And so that was how I imagined the city of Toronto as being like a great big thing that had layers and layers and layers of scent to it, which I could approach and just think of, bird shit under bridges. What's that like? What's the ammonia like? So it made me rethink Toronto as an environment that is obviously filled with smells, both horrendous and wonderful.
Or fried liver.
Or
fried liver.
I like that smell.
Yeah. I seem to remember that somewhere in the book as well.
Yeah.
In some ways, this and The Hidden Keys seem to be an ode to Toronto. There are so many.
They are.
And why?
Because for the longest while I wasn't able to write about Toronto. I was born in Trinidad, but came to Ottawa when I was 3 or 4. And all of my intense personal memories are based in Ottawa. And that's important for me. I don't know for every writer, but for me, because when I need to set a scene in a certain place, I like it to have a kind of emotional resonance. Mm-hmm. So I know that if I'm setting a scene at the National Arts Center, how I feel about that. I don't have to worry about the intensity of the emotion. The city of Ottawa is a map of my emotional feelings in a way. The city of Toronto isn't. I've lived there for well over 20 years now. My daughter was born there, and it still hasn't become what Ottawa was. It never will. No place will become like Ottawa for me. But I suddenly realized that I was going about it wrong, that in fact, wanting Toronto to be my Ottawa made no sense. It could never be. I could never have that kind of original relationship to that city. But being an outsider meant that I could see things from a different perspective, and they were interesting. I finally allowed myself to be an outsider to Toronto, and part of what I was writing when I was writing Hidden Keys was an answer to the question that I asked myself. What would I utterly miss if I were never able to see Toronto again? Mm-hmm. And partly is the lake, partly it's a kind of, there's vistas on it, and then there's the way certain neighborhoods feel. I've lived in Parkdale for over 20 years, so it's the feeling of Parkdale. It's the surprises that a sometimes dull city can offer you. All of those things were like really important. And I was able to consider them almost objectively. I was able to think of them and try to understand why they meant so much to me. Mm-hmm. So both 15 Dogs and The Hidden Keys were a discovery of the city of Toronto, where my daughter was born, so I have a natural tie to it now. But the emotional and the physical are now part of me too, having gone through this journey.
And you really feel the fabric of Toronto in both these books.
If Hidden Keys in particular is successful, yes.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with trying to define a place is that the more specific you get, the less anybody else will be able to enter into it.
Right.
If I'm utterly specific, then only someone from Toronto could appreciate it. But if I'm too vague, it could be any city. So the challenge for any writer that is interested in a place is allowing space for a reader to feel themselves in that place, but putting enough in that it is a specific place, and not just the kind of obvious things like the lake and whatnot, but small things like what Chinatown feels like, or what it's like when you're over in the beaches. Small things that add up.
But you also do it, of course, through the characters. And again, the opening, you plunge us right in The Hidden Keys. In the opening paragraph, you introduce us to a thief, a young thief. He's, 25, 26?
Yes.
Tancred.
Yes.
And he's got a diamond, a black diamond, right in the first paragraph that he's considering what to do with it. Mm-hmm. And so you don't beat around the bush. You get right to it. That's
because my idol is Leo Tolstoy, and he said, start in the middle. And he got it from Pushkin, so I'm just copying a bunch of people.
Can you give us an idea, maybe tell the audience just a bit about the plot of The Hidden Keys?
Well, The Hidden Keys is, so in 2009, I'm flying home from London, and the Times of London has secreted a book. It was Jane Eyre the week before, but it just so happens that the week that I bought it on the way home, I got a copy of Treasure Island. And I read Treasure Island for the first time since I was a child. And I was struck, again, by how beautiful a writer Robert Louis Stevenson is. And he really is a truly lovely writer of English prose. That struck me, but the other thing that I hadn't realized was that the journey that Jim Hawkins makes is a moral one. That it starts off in the inn that his parents own, and the pirates come in, and it becomes who is good, who is bad, who can you trust. In searching for the treasure, there is also a real search for what is good, what is moral in the world. And I thought it was tremendous that this book, that is basically at the origin of all our pirate stories, is also a truly interesting look at good and evil. And so, interested as I was in setting up in paying homage to it, I wanted to do that in Toronto, and it struck me that it had to be a book about young men, because they're still at a moment where good and evil matters, but isn't settled. And they're also, for these young men anyway, where they have a code of conduct that sometimes takes the place of thinking and sometimes replaces real consideration of what you do and what its implications are. And so I wanted to have a treasure hunt while at the same time having someone discover, a young man, discover his own limitations, the limitations of his system of honor, and the limitations of knowing that the truth or the good is something that is held in any mind by any person briefly, only briefly, and that you are constantly responsible to rediscover it and relook for it. So that was at the origin of Hidden Keys for me.
We can't be fooled by the fact that he's a thief. He does have a real code of conduct, and it's not about the money, even though he's a sophisticated thief. Sometimes it's just about the getting away with it.
Nobody is who you quite think they are in the novel, and that's deliberate, because for the reader, the world of Hidden Keys should be at least as treacherous in terms of meaning as it is for Tancred. And so, again, if the novel works at all, you're going through a journey in which you're forced to consider what it is that you've read.
At what point are you happy with your book, when you know it's finished? How do you know?
Wow. Well, I'm someone who hates my work, in the sense that I'm glad that it's done and it's thrilling to do, but that there's a kind of embarrassment when it's done because you're done with it. It's kind of like the spore of the adventure. You've gone through this process in which whatever story you've told it from a million dimensions. You're considering this word, this sentence, that sentence. Virtually when you're working with a novel or even a short story, they can mean infinite amounts of things. And then by the time it's over, they're kind of reduced to this thing, this final package, which is wonderful because it means your duty towards it, if you've done your duty properly, is over, but which is also hugely disappointing. The other thing that's hugely disappointing is that you forget all the many worlds that exist while you're writing it. And so again, it's like cold ashes rather than the living thing. I mean, I'm sure there are other people that love their work. I remember feeling a real sense of jealousy by Ray Bradbury, who said that on nights when he couldn't sleep, he would go down to the kitchen, make himself a cup of milk, warm milk, and then go to the library, pick up one of his books and read it, and enjoy what he had done. I thought that would never happen to me. Never. That would curdle the milk. So.
But are there moments of real elation, like the golden moments?
While you're writing, but not afterwards. Yeah. While you're writing, but not
While you're
afterwards.
writing.
Yes. I mean, I think afterwards there's a kind of coming to terms, because if you're lucky, and I have been lucky because this last year people have been interested in what I do. I mean, the fate of most Canadian writers is to write until you turn to dust and nobody cares. But, I feel very lucky that the last year people have been interested. But what's interesting in that is that I become a spokesperson for an André Alexis that no longer exists. And so it's kind of like, okay, I'm one step removed. But then also, I know a lot of people think that you should be gratified when people like your work, but you are dealing with people who sometimes have extremely strange ideas of what your work is. And so the range of meanings that people assign to it can be bewildering. And so part of meeting people afterwards is trying to figure out whether they're going to like it or not like it, or what version of it they like, And it's less a pleasure than an adventure.
I heard somewhere that you listen to loud music on headphones while you're writing. Is that right?
Yes, that's very true. Ear-deafening, ear-bleedingly loud music.
What kind of loud music?
ABBA. Well, I mean, it's like being at the dentist, isn't it? It's a particularly loud dentist, so I'm not worried about the music and its importance. It's just going, and so I concentrate. So
does that put you in a different zone that helps?
I've always wondered if I would be a better writer if I listened to Beethoven. But the thing is that when I'm listening to instrumental music, I'm inclined to stop and listen. Whereas if I'm listening to pop songs that have words, I don't feel any need to listen to the words. A lot of, they're not very great, most of them. Papa Oom Mau Mau is not going to trouble my consciousness.
But there's a musicality to your language and the way you phrase words. Do you think that has anything to do with your background?
It has more to do with my background than what I listen to, because it really is a kind of pleasing noise that I listen to. I started off wanting to be a musician, and music has been the single most important art in my life. I thought I would be a musician until I was 15, and then I stopped enjoying the company of musicians because they smoked too much marijuana. And so I really couldn't have the kind of conversations and, the interesting back and forth that I wanted. And that is partly why I started to write prose. I mean, I just like to talk, as you can tell. So, yeah, the music was there. But I think even more significant than, or just as significant as the music, is the fact that I love poetry. I've loved poetry since I was young. My mother read to me The Rime of the Ancient Mariner when I was 9 or 10. And so there's a kind of, again, a parental association with poetry. And also for the last 10 years, my best friend has been, and still is, Rue Borson, who is a poet. And she refuses to talk about fiction. So I end up talking about poetry. And so I've thought about it a lot. I've thought about how it works, how it doesn't work. I've thought about simplicity. I've thought about how if you are simple, you can have people come in a way that is more efficient than if you are not simple. What simplicity means, not necessarily small words, but, simplicity of getting an emotion across as opposed to an idea across. So poetry does that with extreme efficiency. It's very fast. And prose can't quite get there. It can't be that fast. But it can borrow some of the efficiencies of poetry.
Prince, one of the dogs, a poet?
No. I wish I had made him a visual artist as I first intended. But the idea of a dog drawing with his paw was just so stupid that it couldn't last. So what was important for me about Prince was not that he was a poet. What was important for me was that he was an artist, and that he is an artist who has been cursed. He has been made strange from other dogs. He has also, by the time it comes to the end, he is the last person that speaks the language that is of his tribe. But he is able, through this transformation that art allows, to take a curse and turn it into something like a blessing. Mm-hmm. He is able to take this world that is so difficult and hard and turn it into something desirable. And I think that that's something that art does. And I don't think it's only what art does, but I think that art is an exemplar of a kind of transformation of tragedy and darkness into something livable. And if I had to say, what makes human thinking remarkable, it's the possibility of that transformation.
What a positive, hopeful note to leave us on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, André Alexis.